The voices around the summoning chamber proclaim that the saintess summoning has been a success, declaring that the kingdom can finally rest easy. However, the celebration abruptly comes to a halt when everyone notices that there are two young women standing before them instead of one. Confusion immediately spreads throughout the room as they begin wondering whether two saintesses have somehow been summoned. Meanwhile, the female protagonist silently questions why something like this has to happen to her. Everything begins earlier that very day. At work, her superior remarks that today simply is not her day. The constant piercing jabs, mixed with what is meant to be friendly banter, gradually wear down her patience and spirit. Wanting to lift her mood after enduring such a frustrating day, she decides to treat herself by cooking an enormous serving of bacon and eggs. Determined to indulge herself, she rushes to the supermarket to purchase every ingredient she needs. After finishing her shopping, she heads home carrying her groceries. While turning a corner on the way back, she accidentally collides with a high school girl. In that very instant, the two of them are enveloped by a mysterious force and unexpectedly summoned to another world, arriving in the kingdom of Radiata. Soon after their arrival, the people of the kingdom explain that they must examine the abilities of both girls in order to determine which one is the true saintess. The evaluation reveals that the high school girl possesses every ability expected of the legendary saintess. She has the skills holy magic, magic power, good fortune, and beloved child of the god. In complete contrast, the office worker discovers that the only skill she possesses is summon kitchen. From her perspective, there is no room for doubt. A cheerful, energetic high school girl appears far more suited to becoming the kingdom's saintess than an ordinary office worker like herself. Even so, she cannot help wondering what exactly this strange skill called Summon Kitchen is supposed to do. Realizing that standing around thinking will not provide any answers, she decides that the only reasonable course of action is to test the skill herself. The moment she activates Summon Kitchen, she suddenly notices a flashlight nearby. Looking around in confusion, she immediately realizes that the surroundings are completely different from the room she had been standing in only moments earlier. A possibility suddenly occurs to her. Perhaps Summon Kitchen does not actually summon a kitchen at all. Instead, maybe it summons her into a kitchen. Regardless of how the skill works, she carefully examines her surroundings. The kitchen itself is not particularly impressive, but neither is it disappointing. It carries a nostalgic atmosphere, although the room is rather empty and lacks proper equipment. As she continues observing the room, a floating screen unexpectedly appears before her eyes. It informs her that she has received 100 points. She stares at the mysterious display in surprise, wondering what exactly it is. After inspecting it more closely, she realizes that it functions like a touch panel through which she can exchange points for various items that improve and enhance the kitchen's equipment. While browsing through the available options, she is amazed to discover that she can even obtain a professional restaurant-grade gas burner. That realization immediately fills her with excitement. If enough points can be accumulated, then she can gradually transform this simple, outdated kitchen into a sophisticated and fully equipped culinary workspace. Once that happens, she will finally be able to prepare elegant, high-class cuisine in a beautiful professional kitchen. Her earlier opinion about the skill changes completely. Feeling slightly embarrassed, she internally apologizes for initially dismissing Summon Kitchen as nothing more than a useless ability. Instead, she now realizes that it possesses incredible potential. Eager to make use of her newly discovered ability, she decides that the first thing she should do is experiment with the point exchange system. She begins browsing through the seasoning section while considering what she should obtain first. Although she ate breakfast not very long ago, the meal consisted of nothing more than hard bread accompanied by lukewarm soup. Remembering that disappointing meal, she finds herself craving something warm and freshly cooked. With everything prepared, she decides that the very first meal she will cook is the bacon and eggs she had been craving since before arriving in this world. To make it, she needs eggs, bacon, salt, a frying pan, and a pair of cooking chopsticks. After checking the exchange menu, she realizes that purchasing all of those items will cost a total of 80 points. Although it consumes the majority of her points, she reasons that these are tools she will continue using repeatedly, making them a worthwhile investment. Without hesitating any further, she exchanges her points and purchases the items. As the equipment materializes before her, she becomes genuinely excited. Everything looks almost exactly like the kitchen utensils she used back in her own home, giving her a comforting sense of familiarity. However, another problem immediately presents itself. She has no way of opening the bag of salt because she lacks both a pair of scissors and a kitchen knife. She considers that if she is going to purchase either one eventually, a kitchen knife would probably be the more practical choice. Unfortunately, after spending most of her points, she no longer has enough remaining to buy either a knife or a pair of scissors. Instead, she decides to spend her remaining 15 points on hand soap, bag clips, and a dish towel. Being able to wash her hands properly, reseal opened bags, and have a clean towel available feels far more important than obtaining cutlery for the time being. As for the salt, she resolves to simply tear the package open with her bare hands. After confirming that clean water is flowing properly from the kitchen tap, she begins preparing her meal. She struggles to rip open the bag of salt, quickly discovering that the task is much more difficult than she expected. At that moment, she cannot help wishing she had purchased a pair of scissors instead. Putting that minor inconvenience behind her, she heats the frying pan until it reaches the proper temperature before carefully placing the bacon onto its surface. As the bacon begins sizzling, she thinks that having a bacon press would make the cooking process even better. She quietly decides that once she earns enough points in the future, buying one will definitely be on her list. She watches with satisfaction as the bacon gradually turns a beautifully appetizing shade of golden brown. The color looks absolutely perfect, so she immediately cracks an egg into the pan beside it. Next, she lightly sprinkles salt over the ingredients before adding a small amount of water. She covers the pan with a lid and carefully waits, timing the evaporation just right. Once the moment is perfect, she lifts the lid away. The finished bacon and eggs look incredibly delicious. Just then, another mysterious flash appears before her eyes. To her surprise, a plate and a fork suddenly materialize in front of her, despite the fact that she never spent any points to purchase either of them. She stares at the unexpected items in confusion, wondering whether it is really acceptable for her to use these complimentary gifts. The day she was dragged into this unfamiliar world, all she had wanted was to enjoy a hearty serving of bacon and eggs. The person this kingdom truly needed was the high school girl chosen as the saintess. There is no real reason for someone like her to be here at all. To make matters even worse, she had been informed that there is absolutely no way for her to return to her original world. Upon hearing that heartbreaking truth, she is unable to stop the tears from flowing. Yet she eventually comes to accept a simple reality. No matter how much she cries, mourns her circumstances, or desperately wishes to return home, nothing will change. With that realization firmly in mind, Sheena, an entirely ordinary office lady, resolves to stop dwelling on what she has lost. Instead, she decides that from this day forward, she will make the most of her new life and live as happily as she possibly can in this other world. The kingdom of Radiata is located on the southern continent of this world, and it is the very nation to which Sheena has been summoned. The kingdom is blessed with a pleasantly warm climate, fertile land, and abundant natural resources. Across the Eastern Sea lies a friendly neighboring nation with which Radiata maintains prosperous trade relations, allowing its economy to flourish. Because of its beautiful landscapes and countless blooming flowers, it is also widely known as the Flower Kingdom. However, despite all of these blessings, the kingdom is far from free of troubles. To the north stretches an immense forest that continuously gathers a strange and mysterious form of water magic. This unusual magical energy serves as the source of life for countless powerful magical beasts that are born within the forest. As these creatures continue to multiply, they pose an ever-present threat to the peace and safety of the kingdom. The only force capable of restraining these dangerous magical beasts is the holy barrier created by a saintess summoned from another world. This sacred barrier pushes the monsters back and confines them within the forest, preventing them from invading the kingdom and protecting both the land and its people. Maintaining this barrier is the sacred mission entrusted to every summoned saintess. At least, that is the explanation Sheena has heard ever since arriving in this unfamiliar world. Unfortunately, because she is merely someone who was accidentally dragged into this summoning alongside the true saintess, Sheena believes there is very little she can actually contribute. As far as she can tell, she has no meaningful role to play in fulfilling the kingdom's expectations. Returning to the present, Sheena suddenly reappears inside her room after spending time experimenting with her mysterious skill. The moment she materializes, someone immediately questions where she has been all this time. She calmly explains that she has simply been testing her unique ability for a while, but before discussing anything further, she politely asks for a chance to eat her meal first. With that settled, she heads downstairs and enjoys her breakfast. As she happily finishes her meal, she reflects that the bacon and eggs are incredibly delicious and truly hit the spot. The satisfying breakfast leaves her in an excellent mood. Moments later, both the plate and the fork she has been using suddenly vanish on their own. She stares in surprise before wondering if the dishes automatically disappear after use. If that is really the case, then perhaps she never has to wash dishes again. The realization fills her with overwhelming joy, and she silently offers a heartfelt prayer of gratitude to the Lord for such unexpected kindness. No sooner has she finished appreciating this miraculous convenience than the same person calls out to her again, suggesting that, now that she has finished eating, they should finally return to the matter they had intended to discuss. Sheena immediately apologizes for making him wait while she enjoyed her meal. The person accompanying her is Volvi Hertz, the knight assigned to support and protect her during her stay in this world. Privately, however, Sheena has given him the affectionate nickname, Handsome Polar Bear. Naturally, she keeps this nickname entirely to herself and never allows it to slip into conversation. Volvi then proceeds to inquire about the nature of her unique skill. Sheena explains that it appears to summon her into what can only be described as an extra-dimensional kitchen. Upon hearing this unusual explanation, Volvi falls into thoughtful silence as he carefully considers her words. His reaction makes Sheena inwardly conclude that he must be thoroughly confused, and honestly, she cannot blame him. Even to her own ears, the ability sounds difficult to believe. After giving it sufficient thought, Volvi remarks that he had indeed noticed her presence completely disappear from the room. Believing that some sort of emergency had occurred, he had entered without hesitation, only to witness her suddenly reappear before his very eyes. Since her disappearance is apparently the result of activating her skill, he says that he can at least understand the general principle behind it. Even so, he admits that it is an extraordinarily curious ability. Curious herself, Sheena asks whether there are any other skills similar to hers in this world. Volvi answers that he has never heard of anything comparable. According to everything he knows, no technique exists in this world that allows a person to transport themselves into an entirely separate dimension or space. He concludes that, as expected, people summoned from other worlds are not bound by the natural limitations that govern this one. As she listens to his explanation, Sheena quietly reflects on his words. However, instead of dwelling on the extraordinary implications of possessing such a rare and seemingly impossible power, her thoughts drift elsewhere. Volvi then advises Sheena that, in his opinion, it would be best for her to keep her skill a secret. His words cause Sheena to pause and reflect. In this world, every individual possesses a unique skill, and those abilities serve as an important measure of a person's talents and capabilities. Naturally, there is a vast range of skills, from ordinary and commonplace ones to exceptionally rare and valuable abilities. Among them, the powers possessed by saintesses are considered especially extraordinary. The saintess summoned this time is an outstanding example. In addition to possessing the highly coveted skill of good fortune, she has also been blessed with the 3 legendary saintess skills, making her an individual of unparalleled importance. Sheena's own ability, on the other hand, is equally unusual in its own way. According to the records, both present and historical, no one has ever possessed a skill identical to hers. When the results of her appraisal were first revealed, even the appraiser appeared completely bewildered by what he was seeing. Sheena herself had been just as confused, wondering what exactly her mysterious ability was supposed to be. Despite being extraordinarily rare, however, her skill was not initially regarded as particularly useful. Once it had been judged to possess little practical value, no one thought very highly of it. Because of that, Sheena has never believed there was any real reason to keep it hidden from others. Even so, the expression on Volvi's face leaves no room for doubt. He is entirely serious. Volvi explains that his recommendation has nothing to do with the kitchen itself. Rather, he wants to prevent her from becoming even more deeply entangled in the kingdom's growing problems. As he mentioned earlier, there are no known skills in this world capable of transporting someone into another space. That alone makes her ability exceptional. Furthermore, he believes that its true potential extends far beyond merely entering a magical kitchen. There are almost certainly countless hidden applications that neither of them has yet discovered. Because of that, he warns her that, should her skill ever be recognized as both useful and valuable, people's attitudes toward her would inevitably change. The same individuals who had been content to leave her isolated in a forgotten room at the corner of the castle would almost certainly begin treating her very differently once they realize the worth of her ability. His explanation makes Sheena reconsider everything. Until now, she has been completely focused on the enjoyable aspect of her skill, its ability to let her design and customize the kitchen of her dreams. She never once considered that, from everyone else's perspective, the truly remarkable part of her ability is not the kitchen itself, but the power to freely teleport into another dimension. Volvi continues by saying that, ultimately, the decision belongs to her. If she wishes, she is free to reveal the true practicality of her skill. However, he warns that the moment she does so, the kingdom will almost certainly attempt to exploit that ability in pursuit of its own ambitions. As for which path will ultimately lead to her happiness, he quietly admits that it is not his place to decide. Sheena comes to realize that Volvi sees far beyond the value of her skill as something beneficial to the kingdom. Although someone in his position ought to recommend that such an extraordinary ability be placed under the control of those in higher authority, he instead chooses to respect her own wishes above all else. Deeply grateful for everything he has done, she thanks him sincerely and tells him that, following his advice, she will not reveal the true nature of her skill for the time being. She also assures him that she will exercise great caution regarding when and how she uses it. Volvi acknowledges her decision with understanding and promises that he, too, will keep the secret of her skill. Just as he has done earlier, whenever she activated it, he vows to remain on guard so that no one notices whenever she temporarily disappears. His dependable promise brings a soft chuckle from Sheena, and she remarks that knowing he will be watching over things truly puts her mind at ease. Afterward, Volvi steps closer to her before lowering himself onto one knee. As a knight devoted to serving the kingdom, he believes it may not be his place to speak such words, yet he still wishes to offer a heartfelt apology on behalf of the country for dragging her into such an unfortunate situation. He explains that she is under no obligation whatsoever to accept his apology, for his purpose is not to burden her with any additional emotional distress. Even so, he admits that he has been concerned about her ever since the day she arrived. His unexpected confession causes Sheena's eyes to widen in surprise. Volvi continues by explaining that after being summoned into this unfamiliar world, she remained confined within her room and scarcely touched the meals that were brought to her. Observing her behavior, he naturally concluded that she must have been overwhelmed with despair after being torn away from everything familiar and cast into an unknown land. Whenever he saw her standing by the window with a gloomy expression while staring at the foreign scenery outside, he repeatedly found himself wondering what he could possibly do to ease her suffering. Yet, despite all those thoughts, he ultimately felt powerless and was unable to help her in any meaningful way. Hearing him speak so regretfully, Sheena immediately realizes that his belief is entirely mistaken. When she first arrives in this world, she is utterly incapable of accepting the unbelievable reality before her eyes. Every single time she gazes through the window, the unfamiliar landscape beyond it only deepens her disappointment and loneliness. During that painful period, the quiet knight, who usually waits outside her room without uttering a single unnecessary word, gently invites her to take a walk in the palace garden. That small yet thoughtful act of kindness becomes a great source of comfort for her. Because of his quiet consideration, she gradually begins looking forward instead of dwelling solely upon what she has lost, eventually finding the strength to think positively about what she might be able to accomplish in this new world. Volvi then recalls how, earlier that day, when he returned to her room, she had greeted him with a genuine smile while happily talking about how delicious her meal had been. Witnessing that bright smile makes him realize all over again that it was the kingdom's own selfish actions that had once placed such a sorrowful and lonely expression upon her face. Even so, despite everything that has happened, he sincerely rejoices that he is finally able to see her smiling once more. As Sheena quietly watches him, she reflects upon the kind of man standing before her. With his towering physique, stern features, and naturally sharp gaze, many people would undoubtedly mistake him for someone intimidating at first glance. Yet she herself has never once perceived him in that way. She realizes that the reason is perfectly clear. Although his eyes appear fierce on the surface, the warmth and gentleness they hold are unmistakable. A pleasant idea suddenly comes to her mind. She asks Volvi whether he happens to be hungry. She explains that it is nothing particularly grand, but if he does not mind, she would like to prepare something for him to eat by making use of her unique skill. Volvi asks whether she is truly certain about doing so. With a bright and sincere smile spreading across her face, Sheena assures him that she is. If she can use her skill to express even the smallest measure of gratitude towards someone who has shown her such genuine kindness, then perhaps this extraordinary ability of hers can indeed become something capable of bringing happiness to another person. Sheena returns to the same mysterious kitchen once again. As she looks around the room, she cannot help but wonder what exactly is happening. Although she had not cleaned anything before leaving, the entire kitchen is now perfectly spotless, as though it has never been used. The only things that have not been restored are the ingredients she consumed. At that moment, she finally believes she understands how this place works. She turns her attention toward the kitchen's point display and notices that her balance has increased to 200 points. The unexpected increase leaves her wondering what caused her points to rise. Nevertheless, she is relieved by the discovery. If simply cooking in this kitchen allows her to continue earning points, then she will steadily accumulate more than she initially expected. That means she no longer has to worry quite so much about spending her points whenever she needs something. Since she is only preparing another serving of bacon and eggs, she simply uses the leftover ingredients from before. Filled with excitement, she eagerly begins cooking once again. Before long, her second batch of bacon and eggs is finished perfectly. This time, she decides to purchase something she could not afford previously: black pepper. Earlier, she did not have enough points to obtain it, but now she finally can. In her opinion, bacon and eggs simply are not complete without a sprinkle of black pepper. After seasoning the meal to her satisfaction, it is finally ready to eat. The moment the dish is complete, she finds herself back inside her room once again. Realizing what has happened, she concludes that whenever the food is fully prepared, she is automatically returned from the mysterious kitchen. A knock soon sounds from the door. Sheena asks who is there. Volvi requests permission to enter. She immediately welcomes him inside. Volvi steps into the room while politely apologizing for the intrusion. Sheena thanks him for standing guard outside while she was away. At the same time, she cannot help thinking that the handsome knight, who reminds her of a giant polar bear because of his imposing build, is somehow capable of sensing another person's presence even through a closed door. She wonders whether that extraordinary awareness is something possessed by all knights in this other world, or whether it is simply a unique talent that belongs to Volvi alone. Volvi's attention soon falls upon the plate she is holding, and he remarks that the food looks incredibly delicious. Sheena modestly explains that it is honestly just a simple meal that even a child from her world could prepare. Her statement immediately leaves Volvi puzzled. He cannot imagine a child being capable of producing such a dish. In particular, he points out that he does not believe children could slice bacon into such perfectly thin and uniform pieces. Sheena quickly clarifies the misunderstanding. She explains that the bacon itself is already sold in that shape. In the world she comes from, bacon is normally prepared and packaged as thin slices before anyone purchases it. Volvi is astonished by the explanation. He reflects that if such perfectly sliced meat is considered completely ordinary in her homeland, then the sophisticated blade techniques required to produce it must simply be a part of everyday life there. Once again, he is left marveling at how incredible other worlds truly are. Sheena tries to explain that it has nothing to do with extraordinary swordsmanship or exceptional knife skills. However, Volvi continues speaking. He admits that from the very moment he first saw the meal Sheena had prepared earlier, it had captured his interest. If she had truly sliced that meat herself using her own skill, then he would have sincerely wished to challenge her to a proper sparring match in order to witness such remarkable technique firsthand. She immediately refuses his suggestion, explaining that she definitely cannot accept it because she knows she would die. Wanting to steer the conversation away from that topic, she gently tells him to eat the food while it is still warm and mentions that he can sit on the sofa if he likes. He insists that he cannot do that, but she points out that the only other place available for him to sit is the bed. Having no other choice, he eventually takes a seat on the sofa and remarks that he will now take his first bite. The moment he tastes the food, his eyes begin to sparkle with delight because it is exceptionally delicious. Curious about the flavor, he asks whether the seasoning sprinkled on top is black pepper. Sheena explains that she hopes he does not mind that level of spiciness. He assures her that the spice is perfectly fine and adds that the dish is incredibly good. However, he explains that people in his country do not normally use black pepper in this particular manner. Hearing this, Sheena wonders whether it is because black pepper is considered such a valuable resource that using it on such a simple dish would be difficult to justify. He clarifies that this is not exactly the reason. Although black pepper is fairly expensive, he explains that most people can still afford to buy some. The difference lies in how it is traditionally used. According to him, black pepper is usually combined with other finely ground spices, and only a small pinch is added to roasted meat. Otherwise, people generally sprinkle a tiny amount into soup immediately before eating it. Therefore, seeing it used as a finishing touch in this particular way is something entirely new to him. His explanation leaves Sheena genuinely startled and confused because it further confirms her belief that the cuisine in this world is quite different from the food culture of Japan. After finishing his meal, he sincerely compliments the chef, describing the dish as remarkably delectable. He explains that although the spice provides a pleasant bite, the aroma is what impresses him the most. Sheena lets out a soft chuckle and humbly replies that it is nothing, adding that she is simply happy to know that he enjoyed the meal. Once he has finished eating, Volvi wonders where he should wash the dishes. Sheena calmly explains that after he is done eating, the dishes will simply shine and disappear on their own. However, her eyes suddenly widen in surprise because it is not only the dishes that begin to shine. Even the handsome polar bear starts glowing with the same mysterious light. Volvi remains completely silent for a while, causing Sheena to become concerned. She immediately asks whether he is feeling all right and wonders if anything feels strange or if it seems as though something is disappearing from his body. He continues to remain silent for a brief moment before finally standing up. He explains that he wants to test something and asks whether she would mind accompanying him to another location. The two of them then make their way to a different place. As they arrive, Sheena quietly wonders what this location is supposed to be. Volvi explains that the place is the night training ground. Sheena then wonders what exactly he intends to do there. Just then, another individual arrives and recognizes him at once. The newcomer addresses him as the former Special Duty Commanding Officer and wonders what could have possibly brought him all the way to the night training ground. Sheena cannot help but notice that the man has an exceptionally magnificent blonde bob haircut. The blonde-haired man remarks that the training ground is meant only for nighttime use, and certainly not for someone like Volvi, who has been released from his priestess escort duty. He mockingly adds that a northern dog like him should simply return home with his tail tucked between his legs. His insulting remarks immediately make Sheena's eyes widen in disbelief. She wonders why someone with such an elegant blonde bob haircut is acting like a complete villain. At the same time, she realizes that she had no idea the handsome polar bear had originally been assigned to escort the priestess. The blonde-haired man then turns his attention towards Sheena and tells the young lady that she should also kindly return home. However, he suddenly flashes a grin before cruelly reminding her that she cannot actually go home. His words instantly fill her with anger because he is the one who deliberately starts provoking everyone. Without any warning, a strange sensation spreads throughout the surroundings as Volvi calmly asks the blonde-haired man to cease and desist from disrespecting Sheena. An overwhelming chill immediately fills the entire area, and even Sheena begins to suffer from the freezing pressure surrounding them. To her astonishment, everyone present collapses under the immense weight of his terrifying killing intent. Despite witnessing this, the blonde-haired man remarks that it appears he will have to teach Volvi the manners that he is clearly lacking. As soon as he throws a wooden stick toward him, Volvi effortlessly catches it. The blonde-haired man declares that a simple wooden stick is more than sufficient for someone like Volvi. In response, Volvi calmly states that he does not mind using it at all. Watching the situation unfold, Sheena cannot help thinking that the fight is completely unfair. The opposing side possesses far more people and is armed with genuine swords, while Volvi is left holding nothing more than a wooden stick. All of the soldiers suddenly charge toward him at once, shouting that they will teach him how to bend the knee. Meanwhile, Sheena assumes that the blonde-haired man is not even planning to face Volvi personally, and is instead allowing everyone else to attack first. To everyone's complete surprise, Volvi defeats every single one of them, using nothing but the wooden stick. Sheena is left utterly speechless as she watches the unbelievable scene unfold. She wonders whether he merely performed a single practice swing before every opponent collapsed to the ground. She even begins questioning whether the handsome polar bear possesses some extraordinary ability to kill people through sheer willpower alone. After effortlessly defeating the entire group, Volvi walks directly toward the blonde-haired man and calmly asks exactly how he intends to teach him those supposed manners. Having no other option remaining, the blonde-haired man finally draws his own sword. However, Volvi's wooden stick collides with the sword, causing the weapon to shatter instantly. Even Sheena is completely bewildered as she watches the blade split into two pieces precisely at the point where the wooden branch strikes it. The sword snaps cleanly in half. Volvi politely thanks the blonde-haired man for taking the time to spar with him. However, he observes that the sword appears to be of rather inferior quality and courteously advises him to take it back to his regular weapon dealer for repairs. While the blonde-haired man is left on the verge of tears over the destruction of his treasured heirloom sword, Volvi calmly adds that he should inform him once he has obtained a new sword. He assures him that he will gladly help test it again, whenever the opportunity arises. As Sheena watches the entire exchange, she cannot help but wonder whether the handsome polar bear even realizes that he has just sliced a sword in half, using nothing more than a simple wooden stick. Voliev now tells Sheena that he hopes she will forgive him for speaking out of turn with the knights earlier. Sheena assures him that there is no need for him to apologize over the incident. However, Volvi explains that, in truth, they have concealed the fact that she comes from another world. Instead, they have spread the story that she is a fallen student of noble heritage. Upon hearing this, Sheena finally puts the pieces together. The handsome polar bear is essentially explaining that only a handful of individuals know the truth about her origins as someone from another world. Because of that, rumors have gradually transformed her identity into that of a noble lady who was exiled from her homeland after committing some terrible wrongdoing. Through the relentless local gossip mill, this fabricated story has become the version that most people in the castle now believe. She understands the situation completely now. In other words, everyone sees her as nothing more than an unruly young woman who is freeloading off the kingdom's wealth and generosity while relying on the nation to provide for all of her daily necessities. That realization also explains why the blonde man had treated her like a nuisance to his country. From his perspective, it is only natural that he would think so poorly of her. Volvi continues by saying that, even as a tasteless joke, the knights did not limit their mockery to Sheena alone. They also went so far as to slander him as well, and the misunderstanding unintentionally affected both of them. He believes that if she could simply be introduced to them properly, their impression of her would undoubtedly improve. Unfortunately, at that moment, his emotions had gotten the better of him, preventing such an opportunity. Sheena responds that there is nothing to worry about because the captain of the guard had visited afterward, giving her the chance to introduce herself to him at least. At the same time, she is convinced that the captain must have been completely overwhelmed after witnessing the handsome polar bear's astonishing destructive power. Looking on the bright side, Sheena happily admits that she was able to see him looking incredibly gallant and strong during the confrontation. Her unexpected praise leaves Volvi visibly surprised, as he wonders if that is truly how she sees him. Sheena goes on to say that she has to admit she was genuinely astonished when he sent all of those men flying away with nothing more than a single swing of his weapon. Volvi clears his throat before explaining that, at that moment, a tremendous surge of energy had suddenly welled up within him, without any warning. When he released that mysterious force through a swing that he had practiced countless times before, the result was exactly what Sheena had witnessed. He explains that, under ordinary circumstances, he is only capable of subduing a single opponent with such a swing, and since he normally defeats his enemies in one strike anyway, there has never been a need for anything greater. Naturally, it should have been completely beyond his abilities to cut through solid matter, using nothing more than a wooden stick. Yet despite that impossibility, he truly had managed to slice through it. From everything that has happened, Volvi concludes that Sheena's cooking appears to possess some kind of mysterious power. Sheena quietly wonders what kind of mysterious power he could possibly be referring to. At the very same moment, both of them arrive at exactly the same conclusion. They realize that anyone who eats Sheena's cooking becomes stronger. The realization immediately reminds Sheena of that famous character who gains incredible strength every time he eats canned spinach, making the entire situation feel strangely similar. Volvi explains that a skill capable of augmenting the abilities of other people is something completely unheard of. Yet, somehow, Sheena's cooking has made such an impossible phenomenon a reality. As he says this, Sheena suddenly realizes that they have already had this exact conversation before. Volvi once again advises that it would be best to keep this matter strictly confidential. Sheena immediately understands that he is absolutely right. If word of this ability were to spread, people would undoubtedly force her to spend all of her time endlessly cooking for others. Determined to avoid such a fate, she agrees that they will keep the true nature and details of her skill a secret until further notice. She firmly refuses to cook under such outrageous circumstances. After hearing her decision, Volvi gently takes her hand and places a respectful kiss upon it. He solemnly declares that he understands her wishes and promises that he will devote himself to protecting and supporting her. His chivalrous gesture causes Sheena to blush deeply. She cannot help thinking about how incredibly knightly he is. Then she reminds herself that he is, in fact, an actual knight, so such behavior should be perfectly natural. Even so, she cannot help but think that this unbelievably handsome polar bear possesses a smile so captivating that it could freeze anyone in place. That thought suddenly reminds her of something she had been meaning to ask. She recalls that the blonde knight had mentioned Volvi was originally part of the priestess's entourage and had come from the northern region. In response, Volvi explains that he was formerly a member of the Night Corps stationed in the northern forest of magical beasts. He goes on to describe how the priestess infuses a magical apparatus, located within the royal palace, with her own magical power. In return, that apparatus sustains the great barrier protecting the forest. As long as she pours enough magic into it even once, the barrier can continue to function for quite some time. He further explains that the last time the barrier received a fresh supply of magical energy was approximately 20 years ago. As the years passed, the barrier gradually weakened, making it the duty of the Northern Night Corps to keep the population of magical beasts under control. Since their opponents are magical beasts rather than human enemies, the fur trim on the uniforms of the Northern Night Corps is a different color, allowing them to be easily distinguished from the other military units. Because of this distinction, many knights belonging to long-established and prestigious orders look down upon them with great contempt, treating them like the unwanted dogs of the north. That is precisely why those knights deliberately picked a fight with them earlier. Volvi then explains that he returned after being appointed captain of the priestess's security detail. However, once he learned that another individual had been summoned alongside the priestess, he chose to protect that person instead. To do so, he willingly resigned from his prestigious position. Sheena is left in disbelief. She realizes that everyone else must have assumed he had committed some serious mistake and had therefore been demoted from serving as the head of the priestess's security detail to becoming nothing more than her caretaker. Feeling guilty about the situation, Sheena asks whether it would be possible for him to return to his original position within the priestess's entourage. She tells him that he does not need to concern himself with taking care of her. However, Volvi gently replies that this is exactly where he belongs. He confesses that the very first time he saw her smile, he felt that choosing this position had been worthwhile. More than anything else, he sincerely wishes to see her smile once again. His heartfelt confession leaves Sheena completely stunned. For a long moment, neither of them is able to say another word as they simply stand there, frozen in mutual embarrassment while silently staring at one another. Suddenly, there is a knock on the door. Someone informs her that her meal has been prepared in the room next door. She cannot help but think that the handsome polar bear, with his incredible freezing ability, is truly something else. She remarks to herself that she supposes it is time for her to join the meal. Meanwhile, Volvi calmly explains that he will take up his position outside the door while she eats. As she examines the food before her, she realizes that it consists of little more than soup, stale bread, honey, and cottage cheese. It is exactly the same menu as the previous day. She is convinced that this harsh treatment is the result of the rumors surrounding her. An idea suddenly crosses her mind, and she wonders whether she can take these ingredients into her kitchen skill. Deciding that there is no harm in trying, she activates the skill, and to her delight, it works perfectly. In an instant, she finds herself standing inside her summoned kitchen with all of the ingredients she had been given. The realization that she can bring outside items into the kitchen fills her with gratitude toward the skill. Eager to earn more points, she checks the system, only to discover that altering a recipe she has already made does not grant any additional points. Since she has prepared it once before, there is no bonus for repeating it. However, another notification catches her attention. She receives 2,000 Night Smile points, leaving her completely puzzled. She gradually realizes that these points must have been awarded when the handsome polar bear ate the bacon and eggs she had previously prepared. Once her cooking is complete, she announces that the meal is ready. A warm ray of sunshine appears, and she is instantly transported back to her room. She politely asks Volvi whether he would be willing to share the meal she has prepared with her. Although he is initially surprised by the sudden request, she apologizes for putting him on the spot and explains everything about her unique cooking skill. Volvi quickly understands that whenever someone else consumes the food she prepares, she earns points that allow her skill to grow stronger. She believes that this is most likely how the system works. Without hesitation, Volvi assures her that if eating her food can assist her in developing her abilities, he would be more than happy to continue enjoying her delicious cooking. She sincerely thanks him for his willingness to help. Even so, she cannot stop thinking about how many points she received after the handsome polar bear ate her meal, while she gains absolutely nothing when she eats the food herself. She silently wonders why the system awards points for a night's smile, but does not recognize something as simple as an office lady's embarrassment. Volvi then mentions another matter. He intends to speak with her attendants regarding the meals they have been providing. She immediately realizes that he must be referring to the strange and repetitive food she has been receiving. Since he is willing to help, she asks whether he could instead request that they provide her with raw ingredients rather than prepared meals. The real reason, of course, is that she can take those ingredients directly into her kitchen skill. After hearing her request, Volvi suggests an even better idea. He proposes that she personally visit the marketplace so that she can choose whichever ingredients she prefers. The mere thought of visiting a market instantly fills her with excitement, and she eagerly decides that she wants to go. Volvi promises that he will inform her attendants about the arrangement, and she gratefully thanks him for taking the trouble to do so. With her immediate plans settled, she decides to spend some of her accumulated points. She purchases milk, a drinking cup, a bowl, and a spatula. She also buys dish detergent and a sponge, knowing that these simple items will make cooking much easier. This time, she decides that the stale, hard bread will become the star ingredient of a delicious French toast. She begins by cracking eggs into a bowl before stirring in the carefully measured milk. She gently heats the mixture in a skillet, taking great care not to let the eggs curdle. She cannot help but think that the entire process would have been much easier with a microwave oven, but such an item costs far more points than she can currently afford. Next, she allows the stale bread to thoroughly soak up the egg and milk mixture. While it absorbs the liquid, she cleans the skillet and fries several strips of bacon until they become perfectly crisp. Making good use of the flavorful bacon grease left behind, she carefully places the soaked slices of bread into the skillet after ensuring they are fully coated with the egg mixture. The bread slowly fries to a beautiful golden brown. At that moment, she notices that the skill has accurately provided exactly 2 plates. It gives her precisely what she needs, without her having to ask. The thoughtful convenience of the skill amazes her so much that she cannot help but feel herself falling completely in love with it. Finally, she transfers the golden French toast onto the 2 plates before arranging the crispy bacon neatly on top. To finish the dish, she sprinkles cottage cheese and freshly ground black pepper over everything. The result looks absolutely wonderful, and the French toast is finally ready to be enjoyed. The 2 of them sit down together to enjoy the meal. As they each take their first bite, both are immediately impressed by the flavor, finding it incredibly delicious. Sheena suddenly remembers that she had almost forgotten about the honey she still had. She remarks that the honey pairs perfectly with the dish. Earlier, she had taken it into her summoned kitchen, and when she returned, both the honey and the cottage cheese were still there. The kitchen had not discarded either of them. Instead, they had simply remained exactly where she had left them. From this, she concludes that anything she brings into the kitchen is her own responsibility to clean up afterward. Although she knows that many people dislike combining sweet and savory flavors, she personally loves the combination. Upon hearing this, Volvi decides that he should try adding some honey to his own serving as well. Sheena gently tells him not to force himself if he does not truly want to. However, Volvi assures her that he is not forcing himself at all. Since Sheena enjoys it so much, he genuinely wants to experience the taste for himself. After drizzling honey over his French toast, he observes that the dish certainly looks far more interesting with the honey added. The moment he tastes it, he finds it absolutely splendid. Sheena happily explains that in the place she originally comes from, this dish is usually prepared much sweeter than this. Seeing Volvi appreciate the flavor makes her incredibly happy. She realizes once again that everyone has different tastes and personal preferences. Volvi then remarks that the dish is also wonderful when sprinkled with sugar and topped with sliced fruit before being eaten as a dessert. Hearing him enthusiastically embrace her suggestion, instead of criticizing her unusual taste, surprises her. It is rare for her to find someone who not only accepts her preferences, but also eagerly wants to try them himself. Feeling genuinely grateful, she tells Volvi that she is glad she had the chance to meet someone like him, someone whose company she can truly enjoy while sharing a meal. Her sincere words cause Volvi's eyes to widen in surprise. He hesitates, seemingly at a loss for words, while Sheena quietly wonders why he always speaks in such an overly stiff and formal manner. Sometime later, Sheena finds herself outside, thinking that it is such a beautiful day. It has already been a month since she resolved to enjoy her new life in this world, and she decides that perhaps a leisurely stroll would be a pleasant way to spend the day. Today also happens to be one of the rare occasions when Volvi has a day off. She had persistently encouraged the man, who usually spends all day watching over her and scolding her whenever necessary, to adopt a more reasonable schedule, working regular 9 to 5 hours with 2 days off each week. It had been a battle she simply could not afford to lose. After much persistence, she had finally managed to convince him to take a couple of well-deserved days off. As she leisurely walks through the estate, she suddenly becomes aware that someone is following behind her. Turning slightly, she realizes that it is none other than the blonde young man she has encountered before. He immediately criticizes her, remarking that she should walk with a little more grace and claiming that this is exactly why country bumpkins are so strange. Sheena cannot help but wonder why the blonde man with the bob-cut hairstyle is following her around. Deciding to tease him, she suddenly calls out Volvi's name. The blonde young man instantly startles, nervously looking around in every direction, while loudly insisting that Volvi is not even there. Pretending that nothing unusual has happened, Sheena casually remarks that she must have mistaken someone else for him. The blonde man angrily snaps back, declaring that not only is her attitude terrible, but even her eyesight is hopeless. Amused by his reaction, Sheena continues teasing him, deliberately mentioning Volvi from time to time. Each time she does so, the blonde young man visibly panics, nervously glancing around, before realizing he has been fooled once again. Eventually, the two of them arrive near the rear garden. As Sheena admires the scenery, she thinks about how beautiful the flowers are and notices that they are blooming wonderfully throughout the garden. The blonde young man comments that such a magnificent sight must be refreshing for a crude country noble like her. Sheena silently wonders whether it is really acceptable for him to keep speaking so sarcastically and schemingly. Wanting to play another prank on him, she suddenly calls out that the priestess is nearby. Just as before, the blonde young man jumps in surprise before questioning what she is talking about. Curious, both of them cautiously peek ahead and soon discover that the priestess is indeed standing there. From the very beginning, Sheena thinks that the priestess is nothing more than a cute high school girl, but seeing her wearing that elegant dress only highlights her youthful and delicate charm even more. Earlier, Sheena is a little worried about her, yet now, after seeing her appearance, she feels relieved, believing that the girl has been taken good care of. Just then, an imposing man suddenly appears out of nowhere. Sheena is caught off guard and immediately wonders what exactly is happening. Without wasting any time, the man approaches the priestess and sternly demands to know what she thinks she is doing there. The blonde man with the bob-cut hairstyle instantly becomes flustered and hurriedly apologizes, pleading for forgiveness for their lack of discretion. The stern man pays no attention to the apology and instead orders the bob-cut guard to make absolutely certain that the strange girl is kept away from the priestess at all times. The blonde guard obediently acknowledges the order. However, after taking a moment to think about the situation, he suddenly realizes something and loudly protests, wondering why he is the one who ends up apologizing. Sheena silently concludes that it is probably because his assigned duty is to keep following and watching over her. Since everyone is making such a fuss over the matter, she decides that it would be best if she simply keeps her distance from the high school girl from now on. The blonde guard continues grumbling, insisting that the entire incident is actually their fault, because they never informed the guards about the priestess's itinerary in the first place. Furthermore, he cannot understand why the man is speaking to him like a superior and accusing him of neglecting his responsibilities. He then warns Sheena that the place they are currently standing is somewhere visited by people such as His Highness the Crown Prince and his close aides, meaning she should conduct herself with much greater caution in the future. Sheena casually wonders if that is really the case, while the frustrated guard immediately questions whether she is even listening to anything he is saying. He complains that, thanks to her actions, Lord Thruster, the man expected to become the next Prime Minister, has now noticed him, even as he repeatedly insults her by calling her a country bumpkin, a spinster, and a ruined noble girl. Sheena shows absolutely no reaction whatsoever. Her complete indifference only causes his frustration to grow until he finally shouts that she is not listening to him at all, rather than paying attention to his insults. Sheena quietly realizes that the blonde guard has just recklessly revealed quite a bit of confidential information about his own country. Even if it truly happens by coincidence this time, she thinks he should be much more careful in the future and thoroughly check his surroundings before speaking so openly. Sheena does not know whether the guard is aware that she is actually an otherworlder or not, but she decides that arguing with him would only become a needless headache. All she truly wants is to enjoy a peaceful and fun life while steadily upgrading her kitchen. In her mind, she wonders whether that is really such an unreasonable wish. At that moment, her attention is suddenly drawn toward a nearby patch of plants, and her eyes immediately sparkle with excitement. She is genuinely amazed by what she sees. The blonde guard notices her reaction and asks what has suddenly caught the country bumpkin's attention. Sheena excitedly explains that the plants growing there are actually edible. Hearing that, the guard is completely bewildered and questions whether those ordinary weeds can truly be eaten. She enthusiastically points out that the area contains rosemary, thyme, mint, and even sage. To her, the place is nothing less than a treasure chest filled with valuable herbs. A bright smile naturally spreads across her face as she wonders whether it would be acceptable for her to harvest some of them. Watching her smile so happily unexpectedly leaves the blonde guard feeling slightly embarrassed. Since he personally sees no problem with it, he gives her permission to collect them if she wants. Afterward, he once again addresses her by calling her a country bumpkin, before proudly announcing that he is graciously bestowing upon her the honor of addressing him by his actual name. He then introduces himself with an extremely long and complicated name that is so elaborate it is difficult to even pronounce. Upon hearing such an absurdly lengthy name, Sheena cannot help but wonder whether it is supposed to be some sort of strange insinuation. The blonde guard mutters to himself that, just as expected, a country bumpkin from the countryside actually eats weeds. In his mind, the words country bumpkin, ruined noble girl, and weeds all seem to belong together. Meanwhile, Sheena pays no attention to his mockery and excitedly discovers even more edible plants, happily noting that there are perilla leaves and parsley as well. At the same time, she cannot help wondering just how much longer this blonde man with the bob-cut hairstyle intends to keep following her around. A moment later, she suddenly notices someone familiar and calls out that Volvi is there. The blonde guard immediately assumes it is another one of her distractions and questions how many times she thinks he will fall for the same trick. However, to his complete surprise, it really is Volvi standing there. Volvi calmly reminds the blonde guard that he believes he has already advised him to show Sheena the proper respect she deserves. He then asks, with a perfectly composed expression, whether the guard would prefer to simply cast aside his hostility, or if there happens to be some other part of him that he would like Volvi to cut away instead. Maintaining the same calm demeanor, Volvi further assures him that, should he ever find himself in need of a haircut, he is welcome to call upon him at any time, and he will arrive immediately without hesitation. After delivering the subtle yet unmistakable threat, Volvi politely asks the blonde guard whether he would not rather return to his assigned duties. The guard does not spend even a single second considering his answer, before hurriedly responding with complete obedience and rushing away as fast as he can. Watching him leave, Sheena cheerfully bids him farewell. Instead of continuing to think of him simply as the blonde man with a bob cut, she decides that from now on she will call him the asymmetrical blonde knight. Once the troublesome guard is gone, Volvi apologizes to Sheena, expressing genuine regret that she had to go through such an unpleasant experience, and asks her to forgive him. Sheena immediately reassures him that there is no need to apologize, because she truly does not mind in the slightest. In the first place, even when the guard repeatedly calls her a ruined noble girl, she does not feel anything at all. However, she admits to herself that being called a spinster does sting a little. Even so, she reflects that Volvi, whom she mentally associates with things like barriers, polar bears, and a handsome hairdresser, appeared with his perfectly punctual haircut, and because of that, everything ultimately turned out just fine. Feeling completely satisfied with the outcome, she gives him a bright thumbs up. Unlike the elegant, pure white princess-style dress worn by the priestess, the outfit that has been prepared for Sheena is much more like the clothing of an ordinary village girl. Rather than being disappointed, She actually finds the attire quite adorable and thinks it suits her surprisingly well. As they continue talking, Volvi recalls that when Sheena was first summoned into this world, she had been wearing some extremely unusual clothing, unlike anything they normally see. She explains that she had simply been wearing business clothes. Volvi then mentions that the priestess had also arrived wearing clothing that looked equally unfamiliar in this world. Curious, he wonders whether Sheena does not normally wear clothes like that herself. The mere suggestion immediately startles Sheena. In her mind, she cannot imagine herself wearing business attire at her current age anymore. She jokingly wonders whether Volvi is trying to get her arrested by expecting her to dress like that again. Meanwhile, her thoughts drift back to her precious kitchen. Although it is still rather modest, she realizes there is actually nothing to complain about. It is incredibly convenient, automatically providing plates whenever she needs them, and once she finishes eating, there is never any need to wash dishes or clean anything afterward. To her, it truly is nothing less than a dream kitchen. Its compatibility with her is, in her opinion, absolutely perfect. She tries explaining to Volvi that when she describes it as her ideal partner, she is referring to its overwhelming hospitality and dependability. Struggling to put her feelings into words, she says that it understands her better than anyone else ever could. In fact, she feels as though she could happily spend the rest of her life married to that kitchen. Hearing such an unexpectedly passionate declaration leaves Volvi completely stunned. He silently begins wondering whether he should seriously train himself in the art of secretly concealing tableware on his person, while simultaneously mastering the ability to produce it instantly whenever the need arises. Before long, he finds himself genuinely contemplating whether developing such a peculiar skill might actually be worthwhile. Sheena realizes that Volvi is standing before her and remarks that she thought he was supposed to have the day off. Wondering why he has come to the castle instead of resting, she asks about the reason for his visit. Volvi calmly explains that he has some business to attend to there. After his brief reply, he falls silent for a moment, and that silence makes Sheena suspicious. She begins to wonder if he has not rested at all despite it being his day off. When she questions him about it, he admits that perhaps that is indeed the case. Hearing that answer, Sheena immediately scolds him, insisting that he cannot keep working without taking proper breaks. She tells him that he needs time to rest because she does not want his health to suffer from constant overwork. Her sincere concern leaves Volvi speechless, and he quietly absorbs her words without offering an immediate response. As she looks at him, Sheena remembers the strange impression she sensed from him earlier. The enhancement from the meal they shared the previous night should already have worn off by now, so she wonders why that unusual feeling is still present. Her thoughts drift back to the sharp branch from earlier, making her suddenly realize something. She recalls how unnaturally sharp it had been and questions why a simple branch had possessed such a keen edge. Volvi explains that the branch became that way because he had used his own skill on it. Curious, Sheena asks what kind of skill he possesses. In response, Volvi reveals that his ability is called refining. With this skill, he can hone and reshape any object into a sharp-edged weapon, regardless of what material it is made from. Whether it is wood, stone, bone, or metal, he can transform it into a deadly blade. He further explains that the skill is both practical and incredibly useful in battle. Because of it, he never has to worry about his weapon becoming dull or being rendered unusable after being soaked in the blood and entrails of magical beasts, even if he has to fight an entire horde by himself. Instead of wasting time maintaining his weapon, he can devote all of his attention to defeating the enemies before him. Furthermore, since he can turn virtually anything into a weapon, he can simply pull bones from fallen monster corpses, sharpen them into daggers, and continue fighting without difficulty. Listening to the explanation, Sheena cannot help thinking that the ability is actually rather frightening. She had never imagined that his skill would be capable of something so terrifying and versatile. Volvi then admits that, in truth, he had originally wished for a skill directly related to weaponry or martial prowess. Sheena is puzzled by that statement and wonders if he means he does not possess an overwhelming combat-oriented skill or some extraordinary physical enhancement. Volvi replies that he does not. His words remind him of the incident from a few days earlier when he fought the castle guards. During that battle, he had not even used his refining skill, yet he had sliced cleanly through their swords with remarkable ease. According to him, he was only capable of doing something like that because of the effects of Sheena's cooking. Although Sheena acknowledges his explanation, she secretly suspects that the true reason is simply that Volvi himself is unbelievably strong. Even so, she concludes that his refining skill is an excellent ability. As that thought crosses her mind, a new idea suddenly occurs to her. She politely asks whether, if it is not too much trouble, he could use his skill to make an all-purpose knife for her. She quickly sketches the design she has in mind and shows it to him, explaining that the knife should resemble an ordinary kitchen knife. However, she specifies that the blade should be about the length of 2 to 2.5 fists. Volvi quietly studies the drawing while listening to her explanation. After remaining silent for a moment, he comments that he has just been thinking about how very small her hands are. His unexpected remark catches Sheena by surprise. She wonders whether her hands are really that small, thinking that they seem perfectly average to her. Instead, she concludes that it is probably Volvi's hands that are unusually large. To settle the matter, she cheerfully suggests comparing their hand sizes by bumping their fists together. At first, Volvi hesitates and says that he cannot do that. However, Sheena continues insisting until he finally gives in. Reluctantly, he raises his hand, and the two of them gently press their fists together for comparison. The result is exactly what Sheena expected. She remarks that someone who can wield a sword all day long would naturally have much larger hands than an ordinary person. It is no wonder that he thought her own hands looked so tiny by comparison. She then clarifies that when she describes the knife blade as being 2 to 2.5 fists long, she is referring to the size of her fist, not his. Satisfied that the misunderstanding has been cleared up, Sheena begins explaining what the handle of the knife should be like. However, before she can finish her description, she suddenly notices something unexpected. Volvi's face has turned slightly red, and she realizes that he is quietly blushing. Volvi quietly clears his throat before politely apologizing for the interruption. Composing himself, he asks Sheena to please continue explaining the design. Once she finishes drawing the diagram and adding the remaining details, he studies it carefully for a moment before saying that he believes he understands all of the specifications. He explains that as long as the handle is attached to the blade, his refining skill will allow him to sculpt the knife into exactly the desired shape. Hearing that, Sheena's eyes brighten with excitement, and she eagerly asks if he truly means it. Volvi calmly confirms that he does. However, he adds that there is still one problem. They will need a suitable material from which to make the knife. His remark immediately causes Sheena to fall into thought. Suitable material would most likely mean metal, but she has no money to spare. Since she is completely broke, there is no way she can get her hands on any decent metal for crafting a knife. Seeing her concern, Volvi tells her that he may actually know of something that would work perfectly. Curious, Sheena asks what he is referring to. Volvi explains that there is an old object hidden away and left unused at the Royal Night Guard station. It is something that he himself once broke cleanly in half. The moment he says that, Sheena instantly realizes exactly what he is talking about. The scene then shifts as Sheena approaches the blonde, bob-haired knight from before. Smiling politely, she thanks him for what happened earlier. The blonde knight immediately raises his voice, demanding to know what business a mere country bumpkin like her could possibly have with him. Sheena simply stares at him in confusion, unable to understand his sudden hostility. Mistaking her silence for something else, the knight loudly complains that he has been on duty the entire time, and therefore has not had a single opportunity to fix his hair after the earlier incident. Although he had not wanted to come to work in the first place, he proudly declares that he is a man who faithfully sticks to his scheduled breaks. Looking at him carefully, Sheena honestly remarks that the haircut does not actually look half bad on him. She adds that his hair is an incredibly beautiful shade of blonde, and its brilliant golden color reminds her of the golden tea she is familiar with. Her unexpected compliment instantly lifts the knight's spirits. Puffing himself up with obvious pride, he boasts that, although she may be nothing more than a country bumpkin, she at least has the sense to recognize the magnificence of his hair. He proudly proclaims that its beautiful golden color is undeniable proof of his noble bloodline. According to him, such a brilliant shade of blonde is found only among members of the royal family. He further declares that it was because of his ancient, prestigious, and honorable lineage that he was granted the privilege of serving as one of the royal palace knights. Ash remarks that this makes Volvi entirely different from a certain northern dog she may know. He then declares that, since he is feeling generous, he will permit her to address him by his name. From now on, she may call him Lord Ash. The asymmetrical blonde knight has obtained his position through nepotism, as he comes from a wealthy and influential family. Because of his background, no one reprimands him despite his shortcomings. With that matter settled, Sheena explains that she has a favor to ask of him. Ash asks what she wants. She then requests the lower half of his broken sword. Her request immediately makes him think of Volvi. Ash responds that, although he does indeed still have the broken piece stored away, he cannot understand why he should ever hand it over to her. Sheena urges him to at least hear her out, explaining that she only needs the blade itself. Because people constantly look down on him due to the poor condition of his jewel-laden heirloom sword, she believes her skill can completely restore it. If he allows her to keep the broken blade, she promises that every remaining part of the treasured weapon will be returned to its original condition. Ash is immediately tempted by the proposal and realizes that, if that is truly possible, he would be able to reclaim his precious family heirloom. The thought excites him so much that he instantly agrees to the deal without any further hesitation. The negotiation proceeds far more smoothly than Sheena had expected. Meanwhile, Volvi is especially motivated to obtain the broken sword himself, though regardless of his enthusiasm, the agreement has already been made. Afterward, Ash grows curious and asks why she even wants a broken sword in the first place. At the same time, Sheena notices that he has followed her yet again. She explains that she intends to use her skill to transform the broken blade into a kitchen knife. Ash remarks that it certainly sounds like an incredibly convenient ability, although he cannot help teasing her by wondering whether she intends to use the knife to cut the weeds she gathered previously. Sheena casually replies that she could certainly use it for that purpose as well. Ash bursts into laughter, mocking the idea of a country bumpkin cooking with nothing but weeds. His strange fixation on weeds leaves Sheena puzzled, making her silently wonder why he is so preoccupied with them and whether he actually wants some himself. Eventually, the two of them arrive at her room. Sheena announces that she has returned home. At that very moment, Ash is startled once again as Volvi appears and sternly reminds him that he has already told him countless times not to ridicule Sheena. Sheena realizes that Volvi must have overheard their entire conversation. Ash immediately protests, insisting that he has legitimate business there, before questioning why Volvi is present at all when he is supposed to be taking the day off. Sheena cannot help thinking that Ash is genuinely quite foolish. Volvi explains that although he was originally supposed to be taking a break, he agreed to fulfill a special request from Sheena. She had asked him to forge the broken blade into a kitchen knife while also repairing the remaining portion of Ash's heirloom sword. Ash immediately exclaims that Volvi is the one possessing such a remarkably useful skill, wondering aloud how he had never known about it before. Sheena silently notes that the reason he never learned about it is because she never told him. With that, she hands the broken sword over to Volvi, who immediately begins using his skill. Although he still refers to him as nothing more than a northern dog, Ash admits that Volvi is exceptionally talented with his ability. Volvi politely responds that he is honored to receive such praise. Once the restoration is complete, Sheena returns Ash's repaired sword to him and promptly asks whether he can leave now. Ash refuses, insisting that since the sword belongs to him, he has a responsibility to remain and see what becomes of the broken blade. Volvi then announces that he will begin working on the kitchen knife. Before long, the kitchen knife is completed as well. Sheena is amazed that he is able to create such a perfectly crafted knife solely from the explanation she had given him. Volvi modestly replies that it is only possible because her explanation was so clear and easy to understand. He then politely asks her to examine the finished product herself. Sheena carefully takes the knife into her hands and realizes that her very own kitchen knife is finally here. She reflects that this is the very first personal possession she has acquired since arriving in this world. Although she has accumulated quite a number of items through the use of her points, every plate and every piece of food disappears once the meal is over. This knife, however, is different. With heartfelt gratitude, she thanks both of them sincerely, saying that she feels like the happiest person on earth. This kitchen knife is the very first item she has personally chosen for herself since being transported into this world. More importantly, it is something that will not disappear, a possession that truly belongs to her and to her alone. Sheena is absolutely delighted, while Ash bursts into laughter and remarks that for a country bumpkin like her, becoming that happy over nothing more than a small kitchen knife proves just how easily pleased she is. At that very moment, Volvi suddenly throws something directly at Ash while coldly declaring that Ash apparently no longer wishes to continue living. The threat instantly terrifies Ash, causing him to hurriedly retreat while shouting that he will remember this. After Ash leaves, Sheena turns to Volvi and tells him that, since he is already there, she would like to prepare dinner for them. She eagerly explains that she is excited to try using the kitchen knife he crafted for her. She confidently believes that it will probably be capable of cutting through absolutely anything. Volvi then tells her that, if she would like, the two of them can train together whenever she wishes. He calmly explains that once she becomes accustomed to using the knife, she too will be able to defeat magical beasts with a single strike. His statement immediately leaves Sheena stunned. She cannot help thinking that defeating magical beasts with a single strike is completely absurd. That is certainly not the description of an ordinary kitchen knife, it is practically a weapon. No, it is more like Excalibur itself. She finds it incredible that Volvi says something so unbelievable with such complete confidence. Even so, she cannot quite bring herself to believe that he is actually capable of forging something as legendary as a holy sword. With that thought behind her, she begins planning her cooking. She already has bread and the herbs she had been granted permission to harvest from the garden. The first items she decides to purchase today are a cutting board and the standard ingredient she wants to use for testing the knife, a tomato. She silently prays that the knife will not slice straight through both the cutting board and the kitchen counter. Then, as she places the tomato on the board and begins cutting it, she is immediately astonished. The blade glides effortlessly through the tomato with almost no resistance whatsoever. She cannot help thinking that this is exactly what should be expected from a holy sword. She quickly corrects herself, reminding herself that it is merely a kitchen knife made by Volvi. From there, she decides to dice the tomato into small cubes. Since tomatoes pair perfectly with basil, she reaches for the herbs she harvested earlier from the castle garden. Those herbs are basil, exactly what she needs. As she begins finely chopping the basil, she cannot help appreciating how pleasant it feels to use such a high-quality knife. The blade slices so smoothly that every movement feels effortless. She becomes convinced that, with a knife like this, preparing any meal will become an absolute joy. As she continues cooking, another thought crosses her mind. Despite having traveled all the way to another world, she still has not ventured outside the castle grounds. The idea of preparing a delicious lunch and enjoying a picnic outdoors suddenly sounds incredibly appealing. She imagines serving the meal she cooked to Volvi, picturing him tasting it and telling her how delicious it is. In her imagination, the two of them spend a wonderful time together, and the thought alone fills her with excitement. However, her pleasant daydream is abruptly interrupted when Ash's earlier words echo repeatedly inside her mind. She keeps hearing him calling her a country bumpkin and mocking her for chopping up weeds. The words continue replaying over and over until she wryly concludes that, after painstakingly chopping basil for so long, she has apparently developed low-level auditory hallucinations. To regain her sanity, she needs one thing that tomatoes and basil simply cannot be without, and that is olive oil. She could really go for some Japanese fried chicken right now. As for the chicken, she could even splurge a little on the free-range kind. She wonders whether it comes flying out of the sky since it is free-range. Of course, she is just kidding, but first things first. If she leaves it for the flavors to blend together, the olive oil and tomato dressing will be ready in an hour. However, she glances at the refrigerator, thinking that she should see just how good it really is. She cannot believe it. Not a single thing inside the fridge has gone bad. Like, this is something that I need too. Anyways, back to the story. The ingredients she bought with her points have been sitting in there for weeks, yet they show no signs of mold. That's quite fascinating indeed. On top of that, even the food she brought from outside and placed in the refrigerator has not spoiled. How convenient. She can preserve anything using this. That being the case, if the refrigerator is capable of stopping time, then perhaps it can fast-forward time as well. She closes the door while internally begging it to please work, and to her surprise, it actually does. I wish my life could work that easily too. But again, what should have taken an hour is now ready to serve with just one door slam, no less. And what a wonderful scent. She begins caressing the refrigerator like a little pet. Now, if she just exchanges some points for butter and garlic, she can make garlic toast. I literally growled by reading this. First, she coats the pan she previously redeemed with butter, then fries the bread evenly over high heat. She transfers it onto a plate and tops it with slices of peeled garlic, and it is, actually hot. Of course it's gonna be hot, dumb. And it smells so good as well. Combined with the tomato and olive oil mixture, it becomes tomato bruschetta. It is ready to eat time. Now back to her room. Volvi notices the wonderful aroma and wonders what smells so amazing. She explains that it is thanks to the super kitchen knife he gave her, as she had no trouble slicing the tomatoes at all. She thanks him once again for everything. Volvi replies that as long as it makes her happy, he could ask for no greater pleasure, making her blush. Oh, so we are now going to see some romance here. Trying to change the subject, she says that they should start eating. Volvi, being the actual country bumpkin, wonders what kind of food this is. She explains that he first needs to scoop the tomato and olive oil mixture onto the bread as a topping, and then eat it that way. She asks him to please give it a try, and he happily agrees to partake. Like, wait a minute, he's kinda too formal for me. Like, it would have given me an ick. Anyways, he takes a bite and declares that it is delicious. The tomato is really tasty when served this way. He has never eaten a tomato with such delicate skin and such remarkable sweetness before, and seeing his reaction fills her with happiness. Naturally, it makes her happy. She knows these are the tomatoes she obtained through her skill. They are just like the tomatoes from her own world. That is precisely why she exchanged her points for them, allowing herself to enjoy the delicious Japanese tomatoes she used to eat. A thoughtful expression gradually crosses his face, and he falls into deep contemplation. Noticing this, she calls out to him, prompting him to explain that there is something he wishes to discuss with her. Curious, she wonders what it could be. He explains that the recent incident in the rear garden has left him rather concerned. While she has been busy cooking, he has contacted his superior to investigate the matter further. Upon hearing this, she immediately realizes that he must be referring to the priestess. He then reveals that it appears the priestess is unable to utilize her own skill. The revelation leaves her stunned. After all, the appraiser had broken down in tears upon witnessing the extraordinary collection of skills the priestess possessed. He clarifies that although the priestess undoubtedly possesses an incredible set of abilities, they are meaningless if she cannot actually use them. At last, she understands why everyone has been acting so cautiously. According to the explanation he received, the authorities are deliberately keeping her separated from the priestess in order to prevent any unnecessary distress for the latter. When she thinks about it, the reasoning makes perfect sense. Her own existence in this world may itself be an anomaly as far as the priestess is concerned. It is only natural that they would want to keep the two of them as far apart as possible. Besides, she herself has experienced no problems using her mysterious skill up until now. She understands that it is truly in everyone's best interest if she avoids becoming involved with the priestess. However, he believes they are also using that explanation merely as an excuse to find fault with her. Furthermore, after listening to everything they had to say, he has begun to suspect that perhaps she herself could also be a priestess. The suggestion immediately shocks her. There is absolutely no way that could be true. They already have an adorable priestess, and there is no possibility that someone as ordinary as she is could ever be one. He goes on to explain that there are people within the kingdom who would think nothing of exploiting the summoned individuals for their own ambitions if they were ever to discover the true potential of her abilities. Should they come to regard her as the genuine, precious existence instead, they might completely alter their plans. As she listens to him, she realizes that he has remained unwaveringly consistent from the very beginning. His blue eyes always tremble with concern for her, remaining constantly by her side as he protects her and worries over her well-being. She believes that, as an adult, she should be able to manage on her own even without receiving such kindness. Whenever she cries or finds herself in distress, she knows she has no choice but to stand on her own 2 feet. Even so, she cannot help but express her heartfelt gratitude for the way he always worries about her. She thinks he is truly a wonderful person, and knowing that he is always by her side brings her immense happiness. He solemnly declares that if a day should ever come when she is forced to do something against her own will, then they will leave that place together, and he will accompany her wherever she chooses to go. After all, with her cooking by his side, he believes they would be unstoppable. She cannot possibly bring herself to rely upon his kindness to such an extent. He is, after all, still a knight serving this kingdom. She fully intends to refuse his offer, yet the words that leave her lips are entirely different. Instead, she asks him to stay with her and to teach her everything there is to enjoy in this world. In response, he solemnly swears that he will protect her no matter what happens. With that vow, he once again lowers himself onto one knee before her. The sight leaves her flustered, and she hurriedly protests, remembering that she has only just been cooking with garlic and that her hands still carry its strong scent. However, he pays no attention to such a trivial concern. To him, those hands are hands of irresistible charm, the very hands to which he has pledged his life. With complete sincerity, he gently lifts one of them and places a reverent kiss upon it. The unexpected gesture overwhelms her with embarrassment, causing her face to flush bright red as she cries out his name in utter mortification. It has been several days since Volvi pledged both his life and, amusingly enough, his devotion to her garlic-scented hands. For that heartfelt moment alone, she receives 3,000 points. She cannot help thinking that the reward is only fair. It is about time, after all. Ever since that day, Volvi has refused to leave her side. More accurately, he refuses to take any time for himself. Despite their previous agreement that he would rest properly, he now works relentlessly, like an overworked corporate employee, never allowing himself a day off. Whenever she tends to the herbs in the garden, Volvi spends his days at the Knights, training grounds, where he spars with the asymmetrically shaven blonde knight and the others. Yet regardless of how many opponents stand before him, a single strike is all he needs. Once again, the barbarian polar bear proves overwhelmingly powerful. While he is working so hard, she decides that she would like to prepare something refreshing for him. With that thought in mind, she quietly slips into the kitchen. As she checks her remaining points, merely recalling the previous incident nearly causes her to collapse to the ground. Putting those thoughts aside, she steadies herself and reminds herself that she has refreshments to make. She gathers the herbs she harvested from the garden, meaning she only needs to exchange points for European pears, oranges, lemons, and finally, a saucepan. As always, the exceptionally well-equipped kitchen provides her with glass jars and a gas stove. It truly lives up to her expectations, making her feel grateful for her beloved kitchen. She begins by carefully sterilizing the glass jars. Next, she blanches the fruit she has purchased before adding the freshly harvested herbs. She transfers the sliced fruit and herbs into a sterilized glass jar, then adds a pinch of salt, along with a generous drizzle of honey. Finally, she pours in water, and with the lid firmly sealed, her fatigue-relieving detox water is complete. She gazes at the finished drink with delight. It looks unbelievably adorable. She cannot help wondering why a simple glass filled with fruit appears so enchanting. Naturally, a taste test is essential. She takes a careful sip and immediately smiles. It is absolutely delicious. The bright citrus flavor stands out beautifully, giving it a taste remarkably similar to a refreshing sports drink. Satisfied with the result, she finishes preparing the drink and heads back, sincerely hoping that Volvi will enjoy it. However, her attention is suddenly drawn elsewhere as her eyes widen in alarm. A small boy has collapsed nearby. Without hesitation, she rushes over and asks whether he is all right. As she gets a closer look, another thought crosses her mind. He is not merely a handsome child, he is astonishingly beautiful. Truly a pretty boy. She kneels beside him and gently examines him, asking whether anything hurts and whether she should call someone to help. The boy immediately stops her, insisting that she must not call anyone. He quietly explains that his condition is incurable. If people discover that he has collapsed again, they will no longer allow him to come there. She still hesitates, unwilling to leave him without assistance. However, he calmly explains that this is nothing unusual for him. After some time, the symptoms will pass on their own, and he softly asks her to leave things as they are. Understanding his wishes, she reluctantly agrees. She assures him that if the pain becomes any worse, he must tell her immediately, because she will not hesitate to call for help. Until then, she promises to remain there with him, encouraging him to rest and take things slowly. The little boy thanks her, before gently resting his head against her shoulder. She carefully places a hand against him, and immediately realizes that his body is burning with fever. She wonders whether she can quietly slip into the kitchen for just a moment to fetch an ice pack for him. Before she can move, the little boy softly remarks that her hand is wonderfully cool and that it feels comforting. His words make her realize something. Perhaps her hands have become so cold because she has been carrying the chilled detox water. Remembering the drink, she asks whether he would like to have some. She explains that she made it herself and believes that drinking something after sweating so much should help him feel at least a little better. She asks him to try just a little of the water. He accepts and takes a careful sip from the cup. Normally, whenever someone eats her cooking, they receive a noticeable power boost that lasts for nearly half a day. She hopes the same effect will occur with the water as well. More than anything, she wishes this frail boy could finally relax, even if only for a short while. Her eyes widen in astonishment. She expects him to glow with the same brilliant light that had surrounded Volvi before, but instead an ominous darkness begins to seep out of his body. Thick, murky shadows ooze from him, as though an invisible sickness is being drawn out and expelled. she cannot help wondering if he is somehow detoxifying himself. The little boy suddenly realizes that his entire body feels remarkably light. He wonders if what she has given him is actually holy water. She immediately denies the idea, insisting that it is nothing more than ordinary water. He then asks whether she is a priestess, but she once again firmly rejects the assumption, explaining that she is only an ordinary person. He calmly replies that he understands, leaving her completely bewildered as she wonders what there is for him to understand in the first place. Without another word, he kneels before her and gently takes hold of her hand. The unexpected action shocks her so much that she cries out in surprise. She cannot comprehend why this handsome young boy is now sitting so closely on her lap, nor can she make sense of anything that is happening. He declares that she must surely be a messenger sent by God to bestow her pure and holy water upon him. He asks whether she can feel the beating of his heart. She answers that she cannot, but he explains that something strange has come over him ever since the moment they met. With complete sincerity, he pleads for the kind lady to fall in love with him, causing her to shout in utter disbelief. Her panicked cry is so loud that Volvi immediately rushes into the room and demands to know what has happened. She frantically declares that an imminent crisis is unfolding. She insists that she refuses to make any decisions herself and begs someone to simply record her information and send an email to everyone identifying her as a suspicious individual. She dramatically announces that she is turning herself in, while Volvi remains utterly confused by her strange declaration. However, he quickly decides that the more urgent matter is to get Rylak off her lap. It soon becomes obvious that the two of them already know each other. Volvi announces that he will take her back to her room before turning to Rylak and telling him that he may come along if he wishes. Rylak immediately becomes curious about going to the kind lady's room. He innocently remarks that he has never entered a woman's room before and excitedly concludes that the kind lady will become his very first night. His completely innocent but terribly misleading choice of words leaves her so overwhelmed that she feels dizzy while she desperately thinks about how horribly misunderstood the entire situation sounds. At last, they arrive back at her room. Volvi introduces the young boy as Rylak Grandsearch, while Rylak cheerfully tells her that she may simply call him Rylak. Volvi then introduces her in return, explaining that she is Sheena, the woman he has been assigned to guard. Once everyone settles down, Volvi politely asks her to explain exactly what has happened. She begins recounting everything from the beginning, explaining how she found Rylak collapsed in the hallway and decided to give him a drink of water. She continues by describing how a strange black murkiness emerged from his body immediately after he drank it. Rylak confirms her story, explaining that after drinking what the kind lady gave him, the chronic pain in his chest completely vanished, along with the persistent fever that had tormented him for so long. Ever since the day he was born, he has never enjoyed good health, and the uncontrollable nature of his unique skill has only continued to worsen his condition and deepen his suffering over the years. Rylak's skill is fire magic, but because he is unable to control it properly, he constantly lives on the brink of death. The overwhelming power of his own ability continuously ravages his body from within. Although he wears numerous magical items to suppress its effects and keep himself alive, he believes he has finally reached his physical limit. Sheena cannot help questioning whether that means eating her food would actually make his condition even worse. If her cooking strengthens a person's abilities, then increasing the power of his already uncontrollable skill should only make it even more difficult for him to manage. Volvi, however, shakes his head, believing that this is not the case. He explains to Rylak that Sheena possesses an extremely unusual ability connected to her cooking. Whenever someone eats her food, they become stronger. However, after witnessing the remarkable changes in Rylak, they have now discovered something entirely new. In addition to granting temporary strength, her cooking also makes those who consume it healthier. It appears that they have uncovered yet another aspect of her mysterious ability. Volvi admits that he has long suspected her cooking might be capable of relieving fatigue and healing injuries or illnesses. However, because he himself is rarely ever exhausted, sick, or injured, he has never had the opportunity to confirm those suspicions with certainty until now. Hearing this, Rylak quietly remarks that Volvi has always been incredibly strong. Volvi then explains Rylak's condition through an analogy. Rylak's body is like a small glass filled with countless cracks. His magical power exceeds the capacity of that fragile glass, causing it to overflow continuously while leaking through the fractures. The damage has reached a point where it can no longer repair itself naturally. They now believe that Sheena's cooking has not only repaired those countless cracks, but has also enlarged the glass itself, allowing it to safely contain the immense power of his skill. Furthermore, Volvi suspects that this healing effect will not simply disappear after a period of time. Instead, Rylak's body will permanently maintain the proper state of balance and homeostasis that it was always meant to possess. The strengthening effect of her cooking merely imbues the person who eats it with additional power for a limited amount of time, before eventually fading away. In contrast, the healing effect functions differently. Rather than adding something temporary, it restores the body to its original, healthy condition. Because it returns the body to the state it should naturally be in, its effects are far more permanent. Upon hearing this explanation, Rylak reflects that throughout his entire life, he has constantly wondered how much time he had left to live, while burdened by his uncontrollable skill. Now, thanks to the kind lady before him, everything has changed. He admits that he has always lived in fear and endured constant pain. Sheena feels somewhat embarrassed by his overwhelming gratitude. She never deliberately set out to heal him, so she truly believes he does not need to thank her so profusely. Even so, when she thinks about this small boy, whose fragile body has endured so much suffering for so many years, she cannot help feeling relieved. She sincerely says that she is glad she met him today, and from the bottom of her heart, she is truly grateful that she was able to help him. The man whose voice had been heard shouting earlier suddenly bursts into Sheena's room, demanding to know where his Rylak is. However, the moment he catches sight of Rylak standing together with Sheena, he immediately begins shouting again. Sheena instantly recognizes him as the same man she had encountered in the garden before, while Rylak calmly tells him to stop yelling and close the door behind him. Upon hearing that, Sheena realizes that this must be Thruster. Without hesitation, Thruster marches over and fixes Sheena with a fierce glare, branding her an evildoer. The accusation leaves Sheena momentarily puzzled. She thinks that she has certainly heard the word evildoer before, yet she has never actually seen someone utter it while looking exactly like the sort of villain who would say such a thing. Her surprise only deepens when Rylak asks whether that remark was directed at Sheena. Thruster makes it clear that it most certainly is. He reminds Rylak of everything he has done to help him reach his current position and questions whether he has forgotten those efforts already. He even implies that, if Rylak continues acting this way, he ought to return to his previous post instead. The atmosphere between the two brothers becomes unmistakably threatening, yet Rylak treats the entire exchange as though it is completely ordinary. He casually remarks that they always joke around like this whenever they meet, and says that it is nice to see they still get along so well, despite having grown up. Listening to that, Sheena cannot help thinking that joking around and getting along are certainly not the words she would ever use to describe what she is witnessing. She then remembers what this man's brother had said to her previously, something she still considers completely inexcusable, and is astonished to realize that this intimidating man is actually Rylak's older brother. Aside from sharing similar coloring, the two of them hardly resemble each other at all. Rylak then rises to his feet and addresses Thruster as his brother. Thruster, however, insists that if Rylak remains beside Sheena any longer, the stench of that evildoer will cling to him. Rather than tolerating such behavior, Rylak immediately orders his brother to apologize. He tells Thruster to get down on his knees and sincerely beg the kind lady for forgiveness. Only moments earlier, Thruster had been standing proudly and looking down on everyone. Now, under Rylak's command, he is already kneeling before Sheena, offering an extremely humble apology and saying that he is sorry if even his mere existence has caused her any harm. The entire change happens so quickly that Sheena can only stare in bewilderment, wondering what on earth has just happened. Volvi then explains that Thruster is someone who is excessively devoted to his younger brother Rylak. Although Thruster's dreadful reputation is entirely deserved, everything changes whenever Rylak is involved. Volvi goes on to say that it is fortunate Thruster never discovered Sheena's abilities before now. Since he is present at this moment, however, Volvi declares that even if Thruster attempts to exploit Sheena's unique gift, he will never allow it to happen. He openly admits that Thruster's personality is terrible. The man is unbearably conceited, completely self-serving, and has no concern for anyone except himself. Even so, Volvi acknowledges that Thruster is exceptionally intelligent, which is perhaps his only redeeming quality. According to Volvi, Thruster is precisely the sort of man who lives solely to satisfy his own selfish desires. Nevertheless, as long as Rylak remains on Sheena's side, she has absolutely nothing to fear from him. Hearing such a ruthless assessment, Sheena cannot help thinking that they are speaking remarkably harshly about the man who will eventually become the future. Prime Minister Volvi then announces that there is something important he wishes to discuss with both Thruster and Rylak. He emphasizes that the matter is strictly confidential and that not a single word of what is about to be said must ever leave the room. Thruster immediately agrees with the need for secrecy, acknowledging that there are undoubtedly countless people who would attempt to take advantage of extraordinary abilities if they were ever to learn of them. Volvi admits that, for Rylak's sake, he himself would very much like to understand Sheena's abilities even further. However, Rylak immediately stops him, insisting that he only wants to protect the kind lady and has no intention of using her for her abilities. Upon hearing that, Thruster accepts Rylak's words without further argument. He remarks that, if Rylak says so, then he understands. He also comments that it is fortunate the priestess happened to accompany Sheena, as her presence ultimately ended up saving Rylak. Volvi then shares his own theory, suspecting that it was Rylak's overwhelming desire to be healed that caused Sheena to be summoned into this world in the first place. If that is truly the case, Thruster declares that he owes Sheena his gratitude. Since Rylak is the person most precious to him, he is willing to place himself at Sheena's disposal in return. Rylak also expresses his sincere desire to help Sheena in every way he possibly can. He promises that he will devote everything he has to supporting her. Meanwhile, Thruster once again grits his teeth in frustration. Internally, he fumes over the audacity of Sheena, thinking that she dares to touch his precious and adorable little bunny rabbit so casually. Sheena thanks Rylak warmly for his kindness. At the same time, however, she admits that Thruster is right about one thing. Rylak is holding onto her just a little too closely. Judging from the intensity of Thruster's jealous glare, she can tell that his possessiveness is reaching an absurd level. Rylak, however, innocently asks Sheena to think of him as her little brother. Although he already has an actual older brother, he explains that people tend to treat him like everyone's little brother anyway. That statement completely confuses Sheena, leaving her wondering what he could possibly mean by everyone's little brother. Rylak continues by explaining that, if she thinks of him as her little brother, then there would be nothing strange about hugging him or holding his hand, since that is perfectly normal between siblings. Sheena continues turning the words little brother over and over in her mind, before finally convincing herself that, if that is the case, then it is probably acceptable. Taking advantage of her conclusion, Rylak then asks whether he may call her simply Sheena, since he is now her little brother. Without much hesitation, Sheena immediately agrees, deciding that if he is indeed her little brother, then there is no reason to object. Afterward, thanks to Thruster's scheming and his willingness to throw around his considerable authority, Rylak is permitted to move into the royal castle. Using that same influence, Thruster also acts as an intermediary on Sheena's behalf and easily secures permission for her to leave the castle grounds whenever necessary. As a result, today finally becomes the day when Sheena gets the opportunity to visit the local market for the first time. She is immediately captivated by the lively atmosphere, thinking that it is absolutely wonderful. Everywhere she looks, people appear cheerful and energetic, making the bustling market feel vibrant and full of life. Nearby, she notices the kingdom's knights engaged in their training. Watching them from a distance, she cannot help thinking that it resembles students participating in after-school club activities. Once their training session under Volvi finally comes to an end, and after enduring a thorough beating at his hands, the exhausted knights immediately rush over to Sheena. They desperately plead with her to ask Volvi to go a little easier on them during training. As they gather around her, they also notice the large bundle of herbs she is carrying. Ash points at the herbs and comments that it is wheat again. He mentions that he heard she plans to visit the local market later that day, and jokingly asks whether she is actually intending to sell those wheat. Sheena casually replies that he should stop by sometime and try the food she makes with those so-called weeds. Ash immediately sighs and remarks that he knew it. Everything always comes back to food whenever it involves her. He then comments that the market in the royal capital is known for being especially lively and crowded. There are far more people present than Sheena could ever have imagined. Seeing the overwhelming crowds, she assumes that Ash must believe a country girl like her would only end up causing trouble if she went along. Ash, however, remarks that whenever he has a break from his duties, he supposes he can accompany her himself. Before the matter can go any further, Volvi appears from behind and calmly declares that he and Rylak will accompany Sheena instead, assuring her that she has nothing to worry about. Moments like these always make Sheena think that the day is destined to be another peaceful one. Now, returning to the present, the three of them are traveling inside a carriage. As it continues along the road, Rylak remarks that he had thought they were still some distance away from the marketplace. Just then, a firm knock echoes against the carriage door. Curious, he asks Volvi what is happening outside. Volvi replies that he has a bad feeling about the situation. He apologizes to Sheena, explaining that he must abandon today's visit to the market because he has to return to the royal palace immediately. Turning to Rylak, he instructs him to judge the situation carefully. If it appears safe to return to the palace, then he should bring Sheena there. However, if the situation proves too dangerous, they must continue onward instead. He entrusts the decision entirely to Rylak, telling him to rely on his own judgment. Rylak agrees without hesitation, stating that if the worst should happen, they will leave the area altogether and head for another territory. With that understanding reached, Volvi departs while the carriage continues its journey. As they travel onward, strange and unsettling noises suddenly fill the air. Wondering what they are hearing, Sheena looks around in confusion. Rylak immediately recognizes the sounds, explaining that they belong to bird-type magical beasts. He reminds her that these are the very magical beasts she had wanted to see before, but explains that they should have remained sealed inside the northern forest by the magical barrier surrounding it. If those creatures have reached the capital, then it can only mean that the barrier has somehow been breached. After giving the matter further thought, Rylak reasons that they would have discovered the problem much earlier if the entire magical barrier had disappeared. In his opinion, only a small section of the barrier, most likely the area above the forest beacon, has been compromised. He admits that it is only a guess, but believes it to be the most likely explanation. If a much larger portion of the barrier had collapsed, far more terrifying monsters would already be overrunning the royal capital instead of only these flying beasts. He further explains that only the priestess possesses the ability to restore the magical barrier. Unfortunately, although Sheena has been summoned as the priestess, she still cannot properly use those sacred powers. Without the barrier's protection, enormous magical beasts like the ones now approaching will mercilessly slaughter anyone left defenseless. Rylak then points out that the flock of magical beasts is flying directly toward the royal palace. He reassures Sheena that they will remain safe as long as they travel in the opposite direction. When she anxiously asks about the people still inside the palace, he assures her that they will be fine, because Volvi is faster than any magical beast. By now, Velvia will have already begun evacuating everyone inside the palace. He also states with complete confidence that, if it comes down to a battle, Volvi would never lose against those monsters. Even so, Sheena cannot stop worrying. Her thoughts immediately turn to the other guards, and she wonders what will happen to them. At those words, Rylak falls silent. Deep down, he knows that even someone as powerful as Volvi cannot possibly fight every magical beast alone. The ones who will remain behind to stand against the monsters and protect everyone else will undoubtedly be the knights, the very people with whom Sheena has already shared so many precious memories. Unable to ignore those thoughts any longer, Sheena tells Rylak that she wants to go to the royal castle. She is determined to use her own power to help everyone there. Rylak immediately objects, insisting that it is far too dangerous, and that she cannot put herself in such terrible danger. However, Sheena refuses to back down. She confidently assures him that she will be fine because, if anything goes wrong, he already knows about her unique skill. She can instantly retreat into her magical kitchen whenever necessary, which would probably make her the safest person in the entire capital. She once again earnestly calls out to Rylak. Realizing that there is no convincing her otherwise, he slowly clenches his hand in frustration. He admits that he does not want to let her go, because all he truly wants is to keep her safe. Yet he also remembers that it was this very kindness of hers that had once saved him. Unable to deny her resolve any longer, Rylak embraces her tightly, confessing that he can no longer bring himself to stop her. He only asks that, if the situation becomes too dangerous, she must immediately use her skill to escape. Sheena readily promises that she will do exactly that, confidently telling him to leave everything to her. With her determination firmly set, she resolves to head toward the royal castle, ready to use whatever power she possesses to save everyone she possibly can. Sheena returns to the royal castle, only to be met by a scene of utter devastation. The moment she steps inside, her eyes widen as she takes in the horrifying sight before her. The castle is filled with chaos, wounded soldiers, and exhausted guards struggling to keep the situation under control. Rylak turns to Sheena and tells her that she should be safe there for the time being. He explains that his combat skills will be far more useful fighting alongside Volvi on the front lines, so he is going to join him immediately. She asks him to be careful, and he confidently assures her that he will before hurrying away. No sooner has Rylak departed than one of the castle guards notices Sheena standing there. The guard immediately questions why she has come to such a dangerous place. Rather than answering directly, Sheena asks whether all of the injured people have already been gathered there. The guard replies that they have and explains that the evacuation has been proceeding smoothly thanks to Volvi's efforts. Looking around the crowded hall, Sheena soon notices Ash lying among the wounded. His body is covered in injuries, evidence that he had fought with everything he had. Seeing him in such a condition, she quietly thinks to herself that he truly fulfilled his duty. Without wasting another moment, Sheena addresses everyone nearby. She explains that she is about to disappear for a short while and asks them not to be alarmed because she will return almost immediately. Her words leave the nearby guard completely bewildered, prompting him to question what she means by disappearing. Despite their confusion, Sheena remains determined. She truly wants to save every single one of them, and she firmly believes that she can because of the incredible power of her unique skill. With that conviction, she activates the summer kitchen. Inside her magical kitchen, she immediately begins preparing detox water. Her plan is to exchange her accumulated points for the necessary ingredients. She knows it will be impossible to prepare enough for every injured person all at once, but she is determined to do everything she can. Time is far too precious to waste, so she decides to skip the usual sterilization process. There is simply not enough time to be as meticulous as she normally would be. Still, because everything made inside the magical kitchen always turns out delicious, she trusts that it will work just as well. The moment she finishes, Sheena returns to the castle. Her sudden reappearance leaves everyone staring at her in complete shock. They cannot believe that she truly vanished into thin air and then appeared again only moments later. Realizing how startled they are, Sheena hurriedly explains that disappearing and reappearing is simply one aspect of her skill. She apologizes for frightening them before asking the guards to please distribute the drinks she has brought. She instructs them to give the detox water to the patients, beginning with those who are the most critically wounded. Meanwhile, she promises that she will continue making more so that there will eventually be enough for everyone else as well. The guard stares at the bottles in confusion and asks exactly what they are. Caught off guard by the question, Sheena hesitates before awkwardly explaining that once the injured drink it, they will become healthier. She earnestly promises that it will help them recover. Her explanation only leaves the guard even more confused. Embarrassed, Sheena admits that she cannot properly explain how it works. Instead, she asks them to simply watch for themselves and see the results firsthand. Without waiting any longer, she rushes over to Ash's side. His breathing has already become weak and uneven. Fearing that he may lose consciousness at any moment, Sheena repeatedly calls out to him, desperately trying to keep him awake. Finally, Ash slowly responds. In a weak but familiar voice, he complains that she is far too loud, grumbling as he calls her nothing more than a country bumpkin. Hearing those familiar words immediately fills Sheena with relief. She smiles, grateful that he is still conscious enough to argue with her. She tells him that she has prepared something especially for him, using her beloved wheat. She gently asks him to drink it, explaining that she knows he is exhausted, but begging him to at least take a single sip. She apologetically tells him that even if swallowing hurts, she needs him to endure it just this once. Without giving him the chance to refuse, Sheena carefully but firmly makes him drink the entire serving, reassuring him that once he finishes it, he will definitely start feeling better. The moment he swallows it, Ash gasps before immediately protesting. Still calling her a country bumpkin, he loudly complains that she should be gentler with injured people. According to him, this rough treatment is exactly why she will always be nothing more than a country bumpkin. However, he soon notices that he is completely fine. One of the guards immediately asks whether he is truly all right and whether he feels any pain at all. He replies that nothing hurts anymore and that all of his wounds have disappeared as well. His answer leaves everyone stunned, and the guards cannot believe it. They think it is impossible because the wound had been so deep only moments earlier. Ash then turns towards Sheena and asks whether she is really the one who accomplished this. For the time being, Sheena tells him to simply say that it was the drink that healed him. She explains that she needs to return and prepare more for the others who are still injured. Ash's eyes widen in understanding. He says that he understands and immediately instructs another guard to take the remaining drink to another critically injured patient. Before leaving, Sheena calls out to Ash, asking whether what she made with wheat had been delicious. Her question causes him to blush. Embarrassed, he replies that it was all right, he guesses. Afterward, Sheena makes numerous round trips to the kitchen, preparing detox water for the rest of the wounded soldiers. She also prepares additional portions for Rylek and Volvi. She is certain that the drinks will be useful for both of them. She is far too frightened to venture outside completely unarmed, so she brings her kitchen knife along with her. Even so, she cannot help wondering whether a simple kitchen knife could possibly do anything against a magical beast. As she looks around the battlefield, she finds the sight horrifying. However, instead of the magical beasts overwhelming the defenders, they are the ones being utterly defeated, almost like helpless little chickens. She notices that Volvi is there as well. He uses the bodies of the magical beasts as stepping platforms, leaping effortlessly from one beast to another, while mercilessly slaughtering every creature in his path. Rylek soon arrives and asks why she is there. Sheena notices the results of the fire magic she had previously strengthened. Everywhere around them, the charging magical beasts have been completely cooked by the flames unleashed by Rylek. She explains to Rylek that after restoring the health of all the guards, she thought she should bring the detox water to both him and Volvi. Just then, she notices another magical beast approaching from behind Rylek. Alarmed, she immediately calls out to warn him. Rylek quickly moves to unleash his fire magic as Sheena instinctively squeezes her eyes shut. When she finally opens them again, she is astonished by what she sees. Standing there is nothing more than a chicken. The sight leaves her bewildered, and she cannot help thinking that it looks exactly like a free-range chicken. It is undoubtedly a free-range chicken. Rylek asks whether the magical beast transformed when she pointed her kitchen knife at it just now. Sheena realizes that the answer is yes. She recalls that magical beasts are created when ordinary animals are exposed to excessive amounts of miasma, causing them to mutate. Once that transformation occurs, the original animals die. Yet the chicken standing before her is clearly alive and perfectly healthy. It is not an undead monster or a mutated beast at all. This realization makes her wonder whether what just happened can only be described as a miracle. Rylek replies that it certainly can. To him, it is something that sounds as though it came straight out of an ancient legend. Sheena lowers her gaze to the kitchen knife in her hand. It is a kitchen knife capable of transforming terrifying evil magical beasts into harmless living animals. In other words, this ordinary kitchen knife has become a holy sword. Even Sheena's eyes widen in disbelief as she reaches that conclusion. She has somehow obtained a holy sword in the form of a kitchen knife, one that can transform a gigantic magical beast into a delicious free-range chicken. Yet despite the incredible discovery, she cannot help shouting inwardly in utter disbelief, wondering why, out of all the possible miraculous powers, it had to end up like this. She has now obtained a holy sword in the form of a kitchen knife, one capable of transforming a gigantic magical beast into a delicious free-range chicken. After drinking the detox water, both Rylek and Volvi seem to grow stronger from within. With their newfound power, they regroup alongside the guards, and together they easily exterminate the remaining magical beasts. Time passes peacefully afterward. Sheena continues enjoying meals with the two of them, and little by little, she also becomes friends with the guards. She understands that everything eventually comes to an end, but she believes that no matter what happens, she will be all right. She is certain that she will always find a way to enjoy herself. The following morning, she cheerfully greets everyone with a good morning. Rylek and Volvi return her greeting in kind. Suddenly, Rylek tells her that they should head to the training grounds, just as they always do. When they arrive, Sheena finds everyone lined up in formation. The unusual sight leaves her confused as she wonders what is happening. Ash steps forward and explains that everyone has something they wishes to tell her. They have all been informed about her circumstances. They now know that she was summoned from another world. They deeply regret the rude way they treated her until now. They believe that such an attitude should never have been directed towards someone who had been torn away from her own world solely for their benefit. Even so, despite everything, she rushed to help them without the slightest hesitation, generously using her extraordinary power for their sake. They declare that they will never forget everything she has done for them, nor will they ever forget her kindness and generosity. From that day onward, they vow never to reveal her secret. They swear that their swords are at her service. Their heartfelt declaration causes Sheena's eyes to widen before she lets out a small chuckle. She sincerely thanks them, telling them that she is truly happy to see everyone doing so well. She says that it would be a tremendous help if they all continued to keep her secret. However, she also asks them not to suddenly start treating her differently. She would rather they continue calling her a country bumpkin, just as they always have. Ash immediately refuses, declaring that he cannot possibly allow himself to do such a thing anymore. Sheena laughs and tells him that was exactly the kind of response she wanted to hear. A little shouting like that is just perfect. His serious tone had sounded so different from his usual self that she had almost mistaken him for an actual knight. Her teasing immediately prompts Ash to loudly protest, insisting that he is, in fact, a knight. After a brief moment of visible reluctance, he instead calls her by her name, Sheena, and awkwardly asks whether it would be acceptable if he addressed her that way from now on. Sheena smiles warmly and happily tells him that, of course, it would. Watching the exchange, Volvi remarks that it is rather amusing. Since everyone has decided to protect her secret, he believes that Sheena will be able to continue living exactly as she has until now. Sheena replies that she certainly will. Sheena is overwhelmed with happiness because this means she can continue staying with Volvi and Rylek. The thought fills her with relief, and she looks forward to the future that lies ahead of them. Volvi then calls out to Sheena and informs her that he will be returning to the north. His announcement catches her completely off guard, leaving her startled and wondering why he must leave so suddenly. He goes on to explain that he originally came to the royal capital as the representative of the Northern Knight Squadron. His assigned duty was to serve as the priestess's escort, teaching her about magical beasts while protecting her from them as she prepared the sacred barrier. However, events unfolded in an unexpected manner when two women from another world were summoned, instead of just one. As originally planned, the priestess received the highest level of courtesy and hospitality befitting her position. Sheena, on the other hand, was not granted any special treatment. Instead, it was decided that she would simply be kept nearby, in case she eventually proved to have some practical value. After learning of that arrangement, Volvi personally negotiated with Thruster so that he could become Sheena's escort instead. More than anything else, he wanted there to be at least one person she could rely upon, even if that person was only himself. Yet, despite being thrust into such unfair circumstances, Sheena never allowed herself to lose hope. She continued to face each day with optimism, wearing a bright and genuine smile. Seeing that smile always brings him happiness, but at the same time awakens within him a powerful desire to protect it. As time passes, however, he realizes that the one truly enjoying their days together and receiving comfort is not Sheena but himself. Her courage, kindness, and unwavering spirit become the very reason he is able to stand where he is today. He explains that his abilities allow him to defeat magical beasts with relative ease. Because of that strength, he believes it would be better for him to return to the front lines instead of remaining by her side. By fighting directly against the magical beasts and eliminating the threats as quickly as possible, he can protect not only Sheena but everyone else as well. That is why he must return to the north. As Sheena listens quietly, she understands the weight of his decision. She is reminded once again of how truly strong he is. Whenever he raises his sword, he is not fighting solely for her sake. He fights to safeguard countless innocent lives. She believes that the proper thing to do would be to smile, see him off, and sincerely wish him success. Even so, another thought grows stronger within her heart. She asks whether he still intends to honor the promise he once made, that if she ever wished to leave this place, he would accompany her wherever she chose to go. She reflects upon the precious days they have already spent together. Although he possesses extraordinary strength, he always expresses genuine delight whenever they share a meal, never failing to praise how delicious her cooking is. Throughout everything they have experienced, he has always respected her, supported her decisions, and treated her with unwavering kindness. Because of that, she realizes that she is finally able to make her own decision. She tells him that she wants him to take her along with him. She wishes for him to teach her everything there is to enjoy in this new world. She wants to travel to places she has never seen before and experience things she has never imagined. She has decided that she will live a happy life in this world, and the person with whom she wants to share all of those experiences is him. If it is possible, she wishes to spend that future by his side. Upon hearing her heartfelt decision, Volvi accepts her wish with sincere gratitude, considering it a great honor. Unable to contain his joy, he immediately lifts her into his arms. The unexpected gesture leaves Sheena completely flustered. Her face turns bright red as embarrassment overwhelms her, and she desperately asks him to put her down. Instead, he smiles warmly, and admits that he wishes to treasure this precious moment for just a little while longer. His irresistible charm only causes her embarrassment to deepen even further, and she cannot help thinking that this is exactly the kind of devastatingly charming side of him that always catches her off guard. At that moment, Rylak suddenly declares that if Sheena is going, then he is going as well. After all, she is the very first person who ever saved him and became truly important to him. His choice of words, however, sounds far more suggestive than he intends, making it seem as though he is saying something entirely different. The misunderstanding leaves Sheena even more stunned. Her surprise only grows when she notices that every one of the nearby guards has turned toward her, all watching the scene unfold with amused expressions. Overwhelmed by humiliation, she becomes even redder than before and loudly demands that Volvi put her down immediately. No matter what happens from that day onward, and no matter where their journey takes them, Sheena knows that as long as she is surrounded by all of these wonderful people, she will live a joyful and fulfilling life in this new world. Sheena arrives carrying the 3 free-range chickens she has obtained with the help of her magical kitchen knife, and thanks Volvi for waiting for her. Using the fresh ingredients, she spends time practicing the art of preparing roast chicken. Once the chickens are perfectly roasted, she mixes pieces of the leftover roast chicken with a variety of vegetables and creates a rich roast chicken and potato cream stew. Volvi takes his first bite of the meal. The moment he tastes it, he declares that it is delicious. He admits that he had expected the rich savoriness of the roast chicken to clash with the natural sweetness of the vegetables. Instead, he finds that everything is gently enveloped by the creamy broth, allowing the flavors to complement one another beautifully. The balance of the ingredients is so satisfying that he feels as though he could continue eating the soup forever. His heartfelt praise fills Sheena with happiness. However, the single word forever lingers in her mind. Encouraged by it, she timidly asks whether she may say something. Gathering her courage, she tells him that, to her, he is like the creamy broth in the stew. She quickly admits that comparing him to a soup made from leftover roast chicken might sound rather rude, but she still wants to express what she truly feels. Just as the creamy broth gently embraces every ingredient and brings them together into something warm and comforting, Volvi has always surrounded her with his profound kindness. He is an amazing person whose warmth has constantly supported her ever since they met. With complete sincerity, she thanks him for everything he has done. Her unexpected confession leaves Volvi so moved that he suddenly coughs. Startled by his reaction, Sheena immediately asks whether he is all right, her concern showing clearly on her face. In truth, Volvi knows that she wishes to express her gratitude in an even greater way. However, he also realizes that she cannot think of anything else he might truly want. Because of that, he makes a simple request. He asks her to allow him to address her by her given name, calling her simply Sheena. The moment her name leaves his lips, her entire face flushes bright red. His irresistible charm strikes her once again with overwhelming force. She feels that if she does not close her eyes immediately, she might freeze completely where she stands. Unable to find any words, she simply nods in agreement. Seeing her response, Volvi smiles gently before calling her by her name once again. Hearing him softly say Sheena a second time only deepens her embarrassment. As her heart races uncontrollably, she cannot help wondering whether he realizes that a polar bear is not the only creature capable of freezing someone in place. To her, it feels as though the power of his voice alone is more than enough to leave her completely frozen.